Después de la primera zona ya hay que coger. Hay que conseguir un heli también. Bobo, si tú estás, déjame ver. Yo puedo conseguir. Para tráelo. Ah, no, este. Ya loco, si consiguiéramos eso por un éxito con la vaina. Eso. Después, Bobo, en la última zona, cae.
Enemy soldier incoming.
Ve, dinero, yo dejé el dinero aquí. No, falta dinero, loco, falta dinero, vamos juntando.
Loadout drop headed your way. Friendly loadout drops on the way. Gas is inbound, marking a new safe zone.
Device detected.
Está peleando ya.
Gas is inbound.
Se fueron, dejaron.
Be advised, you still have squad mates outside the safe zone. Your squad mate has entered the gulag. They'll need to survive to redeploy. Squad mate has been cleared for redeployment. Enemies are dropping into the area. Watch the skies.
Aquí hay 3 materiales, guillao. Mira, míralo ahí, mira el otro que no puedo llegar. Bueno, yo tengo los 3 materiales ya.
Bobo, no coja los elementos, déjalo ahí que está dentro de zona. ¿Oíste?
No lo cojo.
Gave it a solid try. Time to head back to base. Gas is moving. Gas is closing in. Relocating the safe zone. got gas moving in.
Device paired.
Got gas inbound. Safe zone relocated.
Players are Charlotte. Fishing this thing off, and as I got control, I screw that shot. Me in the jungle, treating the cheese, I'll spin like cars at 24-inch. I'm thinking of things I'm doing, I'm spinning on the comments. City high-rise buildings, split the street, now living on farmland.
Gas is closing in.
Move in here. Enemy movement.
Only 25 remain. Gas is moving in. New safe zone located. Supply crates are restocked. Advise you load up now. Gas is moving. Gas is closing in. Get to the new safe zone. You got gas moving in.
Tossing sticky grenade! Took a round! Taking fire! 死なせるもんか。私がついてる。Frag out! Semtex, incoming!
Gas is inbound. Marking a new safe zone. Gas is closing in.
Throwing Semtex! Taking no 攻撃を受けてる! Snipers KIA. Enemy movement. Creature drone out. Got contact. Enemy movement. Back on my feet. I'm good.
All teams, extraction is inbound. Get hooked in and stand by. Here comes the snap.
Look who's here. Dancing with the devil, living to tell the tale. That's what I'm talking about. Let's review. Speed and violence make a great team. You picked the right tools for the job. You fight through hell and not a scratch on you. Good shit. Give and you shall receive. No rest for the wicked. Let's get back to work.
Check your gear and weapons. We'll be deploying shortly. Enemies are dropping into the area. Watch the skies. All stations, this is Shadow 01. Deployment to the war zone has been authorized.
I want that bird ready in 3 mics. Relay those coordinates. There you are. We got the green light. You're going to the war zone. Grab your gear and shoot. You're up in 3. You are cleared hot on all threats. Watch your ass down there.
I'll see you on the other side. Mark a drop point for your squad and lead them in. You got gas closing in fast. Unass yourself to the safe zone.
Intel contract here. Got a scavenger contract here.
Targets in the AO.
See an enemy.
Hey, I know money doesn't grow on trees, but it is covering the ground. Gave it a solid try. Time to head back to base. The enemy took that one, but we'll get them back.
Armor's up! Moving here. Marked our field upgrade. Moving here. Buy station marked.
Gas is closing in. Relocating the safe zone.
Marking contract.
You're losing ground. Move it.
Moving here.
Enemy marked.
Found a self-revive. Taking effective fire! Getting lit up! Grenade out! Armor's up! Marked our field upgrade.
Moving to my mark.
Gas is
Taking effective
inbound.
fire!
Marking a new safe zone.
Assault rifle marked.
Moving here. Moving here. Disregard that. Affirmative.
You got gas moving in. Gas is moving in. New safe zone located. 25 are still active in the AO. Gas is closing in. Got gas inbound. Safe zone relocated. You made it to the top 10. Got your pause. We're inbound now. Hook up and stand by. Here comes the snap.
Dancing with the devil, living to tell the tale. That's what I'm talking about. Time for assessment. Give and you shall receive. Someone stole your thunder, huh? Sent some love from long range. God damn. You are one tough sumbitch. Let's stay locked and loaded. This ain't nearly over.
Use this time for some target practice. Real thing's coming soon. Enemies dropping into the AO. All stations, we are green to go. Stand by for deployment.
Let's get that bird spinning. Finish up. We're airborne in 3. There you are. We got the green light. You're going to the war zone. Grab your gear and shoot. You're up in 3. You are cleared hot on all threats. Watch your ass down there.
Let's roll. All right, soldier, mark a drop point for your squad and go get after it. Gas is closing on your position. Suggest you hightail it out of there. Cash drop is en route.
It's a bounty contract.
set. Stand by to deploy.
Has entered the gulag. They'll need to survive to redeploy.
Enemy marked.
Gas is closing. Hey, I know money doesn't grow on trees, but it is covering the ground. Wars for the Warriors, and you're RTB.
Here.
Your squad mate has intel revealing the location of the next gas spread. Secure them to the uplink station marked on your TAC map for decryption before it's too late.
Recon contract marked.
Upload has started. Set security. Upload secure. Future gas spread coordinates are marked on your TAC map.
Copy. Buy station.
Loadout drop headed your way. Be advised, enemy operators secured a bomb component. Make it their last.
Bounty contract here.
losing ground. Move it. Your squad made it to the safe zone.
beneath Abdurrahim magazine memoir were broadly and a screen in the background of a life that was unsatisfying. But at the New York Times has cornered the online puzzle market. Those stories all have to be used as headlines.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Janine Hurst. Israel's Prime Minister underwent surgery for a hernia. His deputy will temporarily step in. After Jessica Lutton reports, the procedure comes amid protests calling for a ceasefire deal and on Netanyahu's evidence the isolation as many thousands of Israelis gathered outside the parliament. For the first time, families of hostages held in Gaza have joined forces with anti-government protesters. Some have accused Netanyahu of blocking a deal for the hostage release. Those talks have stalled as part of a long truce with last month. Many displaced Palestinians could return to their homes. Netanyahu is deeply unpopular, but since the brutal Hamas assault last October, many have said they trust him throughout the Gaza war. As Israeli weekend, those joint demonstrations have called for a pause in fighting and unity. And from NPR News. Removal of the twisted steel of what was the Francis Baptist Bridge in Baltimore last week after a massive cargo ship loaded with containers hit a pier continues today. Some of the girders are lying across the bow of the ship, and here Scott Newman has more on the salvage operation today.
Crews of concrete and rebar fell into the water when the bridge collapsed. These crews are going to have to pretty much clean up all the debris. That's because even though the channel is 50 feet deep, modern container ships are almost scraped in the bottom when they're fully loaded. As to how long the removal will take, everybody seems to have a different answer.
And here's Scott Newman. Moving the ship will take a while. Officials say the hull is damaged but still intact. People died in the collision, but the bodies of 4 of the men haven't been recovered. In Indianapolis, 7 young people ranging in age from 12 to 17 years old were injured when gunfire broke out outside a downtown mall last night. It happened despite some 25 officers patrolling the area. They killed a police presence to control roving bands of juveniles in the area after the dark. We say this happened around 11:30 outside the Circle Center Mall. No suspects in custody, and there's no conclusion on the motive. Wall Street is gearing up for the monthly jobs data coming at the end of this week. NPR's Raphael Nam has more.
It's been an incredible start to the year for markets. The economy continues to be far better than I expected. There's a good reason for that. The labor market. Employment has been incredible. So strong that some businesses are struggling with workers, like hotels and restaurants. There's more good news. Unemployment remains at historic levels. Wages are rising more than inflation. That's good for workers. Investors are eagerly anticipating the latest report marking employment. That report at a price.
You're listening to NPR News from Washington. It's also from a ice-age block display at the Museum of Natural History in California. It's the first evidence of the creature in that part of the state. It was discovered by a group of kindergartners. From member station KZU, Jeremiah Owen reports the intense storm from last winter likely unearthed the fossil.
7-year-old Johnson Mulry says he and his classmates were playing by the street and they found a bone. The bone belonged to a Jefferson ground sloth, which had never been found before in this part of California. Wayne Thompson is a paleontologist based in says the onslaught of atmospheric rivers in California last year likely exposed the fossil. These years where there's incredible erosion opens up the opportunity for violence issues. Climate change is a double-edged sword for paleontologists, revealing some new fossils, but degrading others. For NPR News, Jeremiah in Tennessee.
The annual Easter egg roll takes place tomorrow in the southeast of the White House, one of the oldest traditions in White House history. 40,000 children and their parents are expected to attend, along with President Biden and First Lady Jill Biden. The children get to coax hard-boiled eggs across the lawn to the finish line, and there will also be various stations on the lawn and the ellipse that will help children learn about farming, healthier eating, exercise, and more. Here's Features Contracts, slightly higher at this hour. I'm Janine Hurst, and you're listening to NPR News from Washington.
The Fortnite comes from the Public Welfare Foundation. committed to advancing a transformative approach to justice that is inclusive, restorative, and racially just. Learn more at publicwelfare.org and the John D. and T. MacArthur Foundation at hackdown.org.
In terms of the civil thinking of the local interview,
From NPR News with All Things Considered, I'm Scott Decker. On this Easter Sunday, we begin our broadcast in Israel. Christians celebrated the holy day. During Holy Week, Jerusalem is typically packed with pilgrims, tourists, and Christians from all over Israel and the occupied territories. Tourism is down. Authorities have placed tough travel restrictions on Palestinians, making the holiday a muted affair as the war starts to spread. Here's NPR's Terry.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Dog Food. Christopher's viewed as the sunrise for Easter Sunday with a lively band. Here, tourist site among Boston Christians. As daylight illuminated the Burton Garden, many swayed with extended chants. Dr. Simon Collins reminded them that they were still from the get-go.
Sadly, the Simon does sound off. You have to just get to the ground where you are. Okay, we pray that doesn't happen. But stay where you are, go down onto the ground.
Collins says everyone is praying for peace this year. Michelle Meyer attended services with her family.
We need to pray that the God who was risen from the dead will bring peace back to this region. So we're hoping for restoration for everybody.
Like many visiting Jerusalem's most holy Christian sites today, Meyer lives here. Her husband works at the U.S. Embassy. 61-year-old Ricky Mead has worked at the garden for more than 30 years.
Bless you. Hi. Faithful one.
She says it's tough without tourists this year, but she's heartened to see so many local Christians who believe in Christ's resurrection.
That's, for me, a very, very powerful thing, especially this year. With all this stuff going on. But somebody comfort them. Has lost its sting.
Death is heavy on the minds of many Christians. Holy Family Church in Gaza. Palestinian Christians singing and praying in South Paris today, one of the last places left for Gaza's tiny Catholic community. NPR producer Omar El-Khatta spoke with 43-year-old George Andrew. He, his wife, and 3 daughters took refuge in the compound surrounding the church soon after October 7th. That's when Hamas militants attacked Israel, killing more than 1,200 and taking hundreds hostage. Israel then launched its air and ground attacks.
Our homes were destroyed, and we have no other place to run.
According to the Gaza Health Ministry, more than 32,000 Palestinians have died there as the war nears its 6 months. And Tom is struggling to find hope this Easter.
So we have no sense to celebrate this year actually, as we are all the time threatened by tanks, threatened by bombardments, threatened by snipers.
He misses spending the holiday in Jerusalem. He remembers when the throngs of worshipers. At the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, that is said to be the tomb of Jesus, the crowd was very packed in Jerusalem's old city. People have been hard on merchants, especially those in the Christian sector. Seen sales plunge since the start of the war.
We have 20
church. He won't give his full name out of fear of retribution from Israeli authorities. He was the only shops open.
Life is short to be right now we are here. Life is short to be right to continue to live in this city because it's our life.
He says he just hopes the church will soon. Very on NPR News, Jerusalem.
20 of billionaires own more than mostly coastal mansions in gated community. The billionaire Salesforce CEO Mark Benioff is buying property in a rural residential town. Waimea sits in the mountains of Hawaii's Davis Island, home to a large population of native Hawaiians, and it's mostly working class. Locals have been watching as Benioff has bought hundreds of acres, a place that's already short on housing. PR reporter Garrett Hurd spoke to 18 locals there and went from a winding reporting practice to one of the houses Benioff owns. He took the man himself about what he's been doing to all that land. Hey, Dara.
Hey, sir.
You know, reporters are normally the ones digging up stories, but I understand this one came to you. Tell me about how you started working on this story.
So, you know I went to elementary school there for a bit as a kid, and my parents had long ties to this town. This time when I was there, the big house around town was this land being bought by Benioff on the island. Everyone knows because of the region down by the beach. But since the pandemic began, people were saying he lived on a high street up in Waimea, and there was all this mystery and secrecy about what was going on. Here's how a resident Mike Donahoe put it.
What the individual comes in and they acquire multiple properties, and people that have been there for quite a while, they get a little nervous about that.
Now it's something like 600 acres in the town. Give us a sense of what Waimea is like.
It's a cattle ranching town and is known as the birthplace of the Hawaiian cowboy, who are known as the Paniola. Since the pandemic, it's untrue a sense of freedom in it. The presence has it up nearly 90%.
This is about the 18 people around town. Interestingly, almost none of them wanted to do Twilight.
So, what is saying in response to what you called me upstate? It basically means you don't put it like to go on public. And there's a lot of no fashion in that sort of thing. And people just really want to specifically on the record and possibly get into an explanation. He holds the numbers well. You know, some leaders and some officials. Waimea is a small town, and people call it that.
For people who aren't tech reporters and aren't as familiar with Mark Benioff, what's his reputation in the tech world?
Benioff has cultivated this image of himself as a benevolent billionaire. Besides just work, he also owns Time magazine and the messaging app Slack, and he has a reputation of giving away a lot of money. In San Francisco, where he's from, his name is on several hospitals who's donated to. He's also seen as this fun guy who hangs out with that stuff. He posted the frontman for Metallica in Hawaii. He's also very much known as his love of Hawaii. Here's him describing his feelings for Hawaii.
So love the people. What we call here in Hawaii. I call them good manner. We call them and of course I call them we will have to do it.
And that's a clip there from your interview with him. You were in the process of reporting on this, and he got word you were poking around town, and he reached out to you. Is that right?
That's exactly what happened. And that's when I got to know a different side from his business. For one thing, he started asking me the time. The focus of his texts were all about the philanthropy that he's doing in Hawaii. And without me asking, he also connected me with people who know about this donation, so I could talk to them. The whole thing really felt like a secret campaign. After a few weeks of a thing, I went back to Hawaii for an in-person interview. But a couple of days before I met him in person, a colleague at NPR told me he audit that company. Benny story. Then, that same day, Benioff called me and demanded to know the title of my book. I never thought that this company would do in the newspaper. And towards the end of that phone call, Benioff indicated to me the exact part of the island where I was staying at my family's home. When I asked how he knew, he said, it's my job. You have a job, and I have a job. And that was really unnerving me.
Makes sense. So, you finally met in person. How did it go?
For most of my interview, when I asked why he was buying in Waimea, he would discuss his answers and talk about his philanthropy. And during my interview, I was really trying to get to the bottom of why all the secrecy and why the anonymous LLC.
And let's just peel that back a little bit. This is a key part of the story. Tell us how you found out that he was behind the purchase.
So I started scouring properties for business for good. And I found more than 30 land parcels with the same mailing address in the San Francisco Bay Area. That was my main clue. These parcels were bought under 6 separate anonymous LLCs. It's common to wealthy people and corporations to use people and use people to private. There's no law against it. But it can make it really hard to figure out who is these large land purchases. Daniel told me that his anonymity was always to preserve the privacy.
You said before that wanting to only introduce you to philanthropy. It is fair to say that he's given away a lot of money and land.
Yes, he's donated all of his goods. And the big island has given millions to fire department, the police do, and he's given to environmental projects, college and private schools. He's also donated 5 parcels of land to an affordable housing project near Union. The plan is to build about 40 affordable homes there. Once we try to get a picture of the scope of what he does, I could see it doesn't all possible. When I looked at most of the properties, the vast majority of what he bought seems to be for him and his family, which in total is about 24 per cent.
And just to bring this all back, it's certainly nothing new for tech billionaires to be buying land to supply, but there are bigger questions here. How you can better protect locals from extremely wealthy people buying up what sounds like tons and tons and tons of land.
Yeah, the people in Waimea still seem really concerned. More of the land lives outside Hawaii than on the island. And in Waimea, locals worry this trend will continue as the cost of living skyrockets. Over the past few years, Bignoff has taken a lot of land off the market. So while people may appreciate his donations, many locals are scared they can't buy out of this place that has been their home for generations. There are no laws against buying land, so it's a tough situation. One person I spoke to told me, at what point does Hawaii not become Hawaii anymore? It's no human subject.
This is NPR reporter Derek Kerr. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
You're listening to All Things Considered from NPR News. The Jacksonville Center for Clinical Research and WJCT for a free luncheon, April 3rd. Is your waistline putting you at risk? Presented by Dr. Darlene Bartolucci and Janice Garden, ENT. Registration at WJCT.org.
We discussed a new community home for adults with intellectual disabilities. I'm Ann Schimble. Join us weekday mornings at 9. I'm Janine Herbst with these headlines. In Baltimore, crews have begun removing the wreckage of the collapsed Francis Scott Key Bridge from the Pasco River. Clearing it is key to reopening the Port of Baltimore, a major port in the U.S. The timeline remains unclear. Maryland's Governor says the economic impact of the closed port will be felt around the country. 7 young people, ranging in age from 12 to 17, shot and wounded last night outside a mall in Indianapolis. Police say it happened around 11:30 p.m. No arrests have been made and there's no word from motive. And the White House is expecting to welcome around 40,000 parents and children to the annual White House Easter egg roll of one tomorrow. NPR News. Support for NPR comes from this station and from Progressive Insurance. Progressive is looking for individuals in a variety of career fields who want to help build a culture of inclusiveness. More information, including application, at progressive.com/careers. From Indeed, designed to be an end-to-end hiring solution for businesses of all sizes to attract, interview, and hire candidates all from one platform. Learn more at Indeed.com/NPR. and from listeners like you who donate to NPR stations.
This is All Things Considered from NPR News. The new book, There's Always This Year, opens with an invitation. If you please imagine it, you are putting your hand in my open palm. I am resting one free hand. I am saying to you, I would like to deliberate here and now. We know our enemy might be English, and the fun that we know. Quickly, we find another language of what they cannot translate. And what follows from that is a lyrical book about basketball, but also about geography, law, faith, and many other things too. It's also about how the career arc of basketball great LeBron James is woven through life. Book's author, Neef Abdul-Rahim, who joins the panel. Welcome back to the show.
Thank you for having me again, Seth. It's really wonderful to be here.
You know, I love this book so much. I'm entirely sure how to describe it. Art memoir, art reputation, poetry collection, art essay collection. How do you think about this book?
You know, it's funny. I've been running into that too early on in the process, and now still when I'm to the elevator station. I think, really, I'm being honest, that feels like an achievement. Because so much of my intent with the book was working against a singular aboutness, or positioning the book as something that could be operating against neat prescriptions, because I think I was trying to tie together multiple ideas. Sure, it was singular as it left to basketball, but I kind of wanted to make basketball just a canvas of how people started playing a lot of other things, be it mentality or place or whatever in my case. I think mostly this is about the time, but attempted to be honest with myself about the reality.
It seems to me like it could also be a book about geography, about being shaped by the place you grow up in, and that moment where you choose to stay or leave, or maybe leave and come back. And I was hoping you could read a passage that deals directly with that for us.
This is from the third quarter, the third act of the book. It bears mentioning that I come from a place people leave. Yes, when the Browns left, the reaction made enough sense to me, I suppose, but there was a part of me that felt entirely unsurprised. People leave this place. There are Midwestern states that are far less commercial on a lifetime shore. Even with an understanding of direction, I had known that's up the order of the Dakotas. I've been known to point at a great many square-like landscapes while equal moving. Nebraska. And so I get it. We don't have that. People at least claim to know our higher shape of the heart. A jaguar heart. A heart with sharp edges. A heart as a weapon. That's just so many people think their way out of it.
What is Ohio, and specifically what is Columbus mean to you and who you are?
I think at this stage in my life, it's the one constant that keeps me tethered to a version of myself that is most recognizable. You know, you don't choose place. Place is something that happens to you. Place is made to you. Second choice that is made for you after the choice of who your parents are. But if you have the means and ability, there are those of us who at some point in our lives choose a place back. And I think choosing that place back doesn't happen once, I mean, it happens several times. It's like any other relationship. You are choosing to love a place or a person as they are, and checking in with if you are capable of continuing to love that place or person as they evolve. Sometimes as they evolve without you, or sometimes as you evolve without them. So it's a real amount that has always unfolded. Someone asked me the question of what have I left behind in my growth, or what has left me behind in the growth that I've decades ago. The answer doesn't look the way, just from an architectural standpoint. It doesn't look the way it looks like myself. It doesn't look the way it looks when I moved back to 2017. And asking myself, what I can live with. That, for me, I've turned my inward to people I've yet to convey the people I love as their own architecture. A much more reliable, much more sturdy architecture than the architecture that is simply under the siege of gentrification. And that has been grounding for me. It's been grounding for me to say, okay, I can't trust that this building will stay. I can't trust that this basketball court will stay. I can't trust that this mural or medium will stay. What I do know is that for that, in a corner of the city or many corners of the city, there are people basketball in a very specific way, and eventually getting to how through that kind of render each other hold cities unto ourselves.
Yeah. Can you tell me how you thought about basketball more broadly, and LeBron James specifically, weaving in and out of these big questions you're asking? Because in the first, I guess the second and third quarter of the book, and I say you organize the book like basketball game and quarters, you're writing these evocative, sad scenes of how, like you said, your life was not unfolding the way you wanted it in a variety of ways. And it's almost like LeBron James is kind of floating through as a specter on the TV screen in the background, keeping you company in a moment where it seems to me like you really need it. How did you think about your relationship with basketball and the broader comments and the broader thoughts in those moments?
That's such a good question, but that's such a good image. The content of the TV in the background, because it was that. In a way, it was that very plainly material, realistic, literal section. Because when I would say unhoused, right, I was kind of, sometimes at night you kind of just walk by the place and you walk through downtown. I remember seeing very clearly walking through downtown Columbus and just hearing cab games blaring out of open doors, those bars, those restaurants, things like that. It's not having, I could go in there and eventually find something. I would eventually get thrown out of those places. So, I think playing and watching basketball, even though this book is not like a heavy, in-depth basketball that I'm a beer basketball memoir, I did spend a lot of time watching so much of the research for this book is me watching clips from the early mid-2000s and LeBron James playing basketball, because my headspace while living through that was entirely different. It was like you said, like LeBron was on the screen in the background of a life that was unsatisfying. So they were almost like being watched through that. And now, when I watch the satisfaction, a little bit more cyberpunk, and that's really cool.
LeBron James, of course, left the Cavs for a while. He took his coach to South.
Exhibit architecture feedback. Still want to be alive. It resurrected the building and surprised. Anita Birapid, author of the new book, has published this year on basketball suspension. Thank you so much. Thank you, so I really appreciate it.
Many people, I was greatly influenced by my parents. My parents were both science-minded people. My mother was recruited for the Navy, worked on the Enigma code, the infamous German military code, because she was good at math and science. And I will say objectively, my mother was very good at puzzles. And when you grow up with all this science going on, you think it's the way to go. I thought it was really cool. But here's what happened. We were playing cards on the front porch. At this point in our story, perhaps 4 years old. And I got stung by a bee. This was traumatic. It was my first bee sting. Didn't know what happened. Came out of nowhere. And it was fun. I was young. It was fun. My mother put ammonia on the bee sting. Ammonia, for those who are not familiar with it, it's what you smell when you smell window cleaner. Ammonia is really good at cleaning glass. Anyway, the ammonia bottle has thrown plasma. My mother's trying to kill me, is what I was saying. And I was a rambunctious little boy. I can understand that. But interest in killing me. I got that. But after she put the ammonia on, the bee sting, it somehow denatures the venom. And the bee sting felt better almost immediately. I thought, that's amazing that this poison, if you drink it, it would be really bad. If you put it on your skin, it could have great benefit after the bee sting. So then I started bees come and go from this azalea. It's very fun. But I got to the point where I thought I was watching the same bee, the same individual come fill our pollen baskets, fly out and look out. It's fascinating. And I remember reading the news, believe it or not, Washington Post. According to aerodynamic theory, bumblebees cannot fly. It's amazing. And I realized, don't believe everything Williams tells you today.
bees are flying by. The problem has got to be with this theory, if indeed there really is a problem. And it turned out that people really didn't fully understand how bees fly until many years later. Bees turn their wings completely upside down, bring them forward, almost like somebody with feathery boars and skull growing from. After a while, when I got out of engineering school, my first job was in aerospace. Was at Boeing, because it's just exciting to watch things fly. And all that started because I got stung by a bee. My scientifically passionate parents took care of me. I think my mother would be proud of me. Everyday things she did as I was growing up started me on a lifelong journey in science. The reason I wanted to do the Bill Nye the Science Guy show is because I was very concerned about the future. Without science, we are not going to address climate change. We're not going to be able to feed billions of people. And so what we have to do is get young people excited about science. When we did the Science Guy show in the 1990s, we had very compelling research that 10 years old is about as old as you can be to get what we call the lifelong passion for science. It does not cost that much to teach elementary science, and the benefits down the road will be extraordinary. If we have an increasingly technologically complex society, and we have a smaller and smaller fraction of our populace who understands how it all works, that is a formula for disaster. And it's easy for me to say that, it's easy for anyone to nod along, but for real, we have to educate young people in the process. Passion, beauty, and joy, PB&J, of science. There's some ideas that I think are really, really important. And not just professional educators, but when you're trying to get a point across to somebody else, your corporate presentation, you're negotiating in court, whatever you might be doing. Have really clear ideas about what you want to get across. And so in education, there's a phrase, a learning objective. And a learning objective is something very specific. It's something you can test. So after the TV show, after the podcast, after this masterclass, we could ask you a question about what we had discussed, and you'd be able to recite and come back with the answer. In elementary science education, it would be, we know that dinosaurs existed because we found the fossil bones. Dinosaurs and humans did not live at the same time. Okay, if you get all this other stuff about potassium argon dating and radioactivity and volcanic ash burying from certain bone beds, then that's great. You know, ancient dinosaurs existed, we found their fossil bones. Humans and ancient dinosaurs did not live at the same time. Those are learning objectives. This would have been events, something unexpected, something you observed that you didn't expect. So furthermore, you have a hypothesis about it that just doesn't work out. It's unexpected. It's counterintuitive. It's discrepant. And whatever it is, something happened and you can't figure out why it happened. It catches your attention. It's a great starting point for critical thinking. People talk about entropy. And I just want everybody to realize what entropy is. It's a measurement of disorder. And the classic example, everybody, is heat. Heat is energy that always spreads out. Ponds and lakes do not freeze spontaneously in the summertime. Heat spreads out. Energy spreads out. Time only goes one way. You're born, you grow up, and so on. Here's an entropy demonstration. You got blue beads and white beads. You shake them up, and see what happens. The white beads float. The blue beads sink. The white beads are less dense than the blue beads. Fine. The white beads are sinking. or beads are floating. Order is emerging from disorder. Entropy is going away. Time is running backwards. Dogs are living with cats, and so on. But you know, this is some Bill Nye science guy trick or demonstration. You know the beads do not have minds of their own and they're choosing to float or sink. You know it. And so, overcome any superstition. Accept that things are not always as they appear. So how did this happen? How did order come from disorder and a pond freeze in the summertime? This is a science teacher's discrepant event. This is something unexpected. When the unexpected happens, that's an opportunity for learning, for engagement. As Isaac Asimov said, the most exciting phrase to hear in science, amongst new discoveries, is not read that, but that's fine. This is a demonstration about entropy. The arrow of time goes one way. Heat energy always spreads out. And this is a huge problem for us humans. For centuries, we've been using heat to make something spin, to make mechanical, useful work. That's what a car engine is. That's what a turbine and an electric power plant is. You get something hot, we get it to expand, we get molecules to spread out, and as they spread out, we get them to push on something, make something spin. Well, in the coming decades, we can't just be burning fossil fuels as a source of heat, trying to convert that into useful work. Electricity is this wonderful magical energy, so you have to find more ways to produce it. Just think what is possible in the next few decades, especially if we can produce electricity in virtually unlimited quantities. It's so exciting. It fills me with optimism about the future. The quality of life of everyone will go up. And we are going to do this. We're going to figure out how to do this. It's science. I gotta say, I love this demonstration. Oh, you want to know how it works? Oh yeah, that. Well, while there are two different beads, two different kinds of beads, two different colors, and two different densities, in general, in plastic, everybody, when something is a darker color, it's denser. A black flying disc weighs more than a white flying disc. So the white beads weigh less than the blue beads. But here, it's not just the beads that have different densities. So there are two different liquids. They're both clear. And our presumption might be if they're both clear, they're both the same liquid. It's very salty water, which is quite dense, compared with alcohol, which is nearly as dense. It's not magic, it's I want you to yell at the television. It's science. So years ago, we had this very compelling research with these very well-respected, learned academicians advising the science mission. We want the viewer to engage in a call to action. We want the viewer to see a discrepant event and find a holistic way to achieve an explanation. So we did this. We had full screen with 2 words. Try it! Oh, that's brilliant! Oh my God, how did you come up with that? That's fantastic! It just shows you, everybody, that you can't overthink things. It's not magic. It's science. So here are your learning objectives. Trivia creates a framework of knowledge in your mind. Small things can have big impacts. Learn from disruptive events. Explore everything all at once. Blah, 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 blah. Blah, 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 blah. The information age is both a blessing and a curse. A blurse, if you will. You need a scientific system to handle all that. How do you assess what is accurate, what's valid, what's true, and what's false? Think critically, filter critically, and it will change how you see the world. So today, there's so much information available to almost everyone. It's the internet. But the internet's not available to everyone. You've got to fix that. You've got to make the internet just like any other utility, or water, or electricity. But there's another aspect of information today, and that's overload. We have so much information coming at us all the time. It's very easy to get confused, to think something is a reliable source of information when it might not be. In science, we rely on what I like to call bottom-up critical thinking. In science, someone writes a scientific paper, then other people evaluate it. There is no organization as such in science that tells people what to write about and what to conclude. That would not work in science. So everybody, I'm of a certain age. If I wanted to know the atomic number of rubidium, I would have to go to a book and look it up. And when I found it in a book, I would trust it. The atomic number of rubidium would be there for a second. But now, I can have my phone, I can have a laptop, I can have any sorts of devices, find the atomic number of any isotope in a matter of moments, certainly less than a second. It's very unlikely that someone's going to make up a wrong number of protons or rubidium. Very unlikely. However, what if someone's running for a political office? Could you create a false claim against that person? And if the public think that this person is not as trustworthy as he or she presents himself. Yeah, people do that all the time. They make false claims about it. There's a whole industry of this. We want people to have critical thinking skills. If what they see on the internet, this example, is misinformation or wrong information, or they don't have the ability to sort the good information from the bad, then we're back where we started. Having insufficient critical thinking skills is every bit as difficult or deleterious or bad for everybody as not having the information in the first place. Critical thinking is the most important skill we can have today. You can learn to evaluate evidence, to question things. It will help all of us going into the future. In science, critical thinking, it all starts with an hypothesis, an idea underneath, an explanation for a phenomenon. So here's a demonstration that I've always enjoyed. I will light this candle, and we will observe the color of the flame. So the candle glows yellow, and we associate yellow with warm light and heat. This glass of ice water is cold. We associate cold with the color blue. It's always good to have a hypothesis and then question it. So I hope you questioned your hypothesis that was a regular wax candle. Turned out to be an apple with a cord. It looked like a candle, but it wasn't. It's one more thing where what you observe may not be true. You have to come up with a way to test your hypothesis. Question things. Question your hypotheses. Think critically. Very good. The wick was a sliver of almond. And it's got calories. Almonds have calories. And that's why it burns. Now, you probably don't want to take a bite out of every hypothesis that you want to test, but you get the idea. Now on to colors. We associate that warm light with warm temperatures. We associate what we call it cool temperatures. So let's test a hypothesis about the energy in light. Do some critical thinking. Here's a piece of phosphorescent material. It glows when light hits it. You might think red is a lot of energy. Anyway, when we shine the red light on the phosphorescent material, nothing happens. We'll do the same demonstration with blue light. Blue light excites the molecules in the board immediately. So if you thought that red light had more energy than blue light, you were mistaken. So when you see a red or yellow flame, it's actually cooler than a bright blue flame. That's a picture of Saturn. So everybody, here's what was going to happen. I was going to snap and we were going to have a delay, a comedic delay. It was going to be brilliant. But here, spending a fortune. They all get food and parking places and everybody's got a mask, it's COVID and all that. But then when I went like it, no, things not working. Oh. It's all right. It's all right. Get another job. Anyway, we tested the hypothesis that red light is more energetic, it has more energy than blue light. But it doesn't. Blue light is a shorter wavelength, so there's more waves and more crests and troughs in any given length than the red light. It's not magic, people. It's science. So I have another idea that I'm very fond of, a critical filter, where you filter the claim before you even evaluate it. And there's three aspects of this. The first thing is the claim specific? When someone says, aliens have abducted 10% of all humans, that's really not that specific for 7.8 billion humans. And then the second thing is an old idea called Occam's razor, which is attributed to William Occam, pointed out that if you have an explanation for a phenomenon, in general, the simplest explanation is the most reasonable. So let's say someone claims that he or she has been abducted by aliens. And they come back to Earth and they say, well, take an x-ray of my nose and you'll see some scar tissue that's there because the aliens put a probe on my nose. Okay, there's the claim. And the evidence is scar tissue in the nose. Well, William Occam, if you had the opportunity, might point out that there's a lot of other ways to get scar tissue in your nose without getting abducted by aliens. And that's traditionally called Occam's razor, where you shave away the extraneous, the unprovable parts of the claim. People see things in the sky that they can't explain, right? They presume it's something from an alien civilization. There's no real evidence for that kind of thing. Whereas things happen in the sky all the time. Bolides in the day, with meteors at night, you have meteorites. By the way, you can go up with a white sheet, leave it on the ground, and then you go over the next morning. It's massive. Space. Because the Earth gets hit with hundreds of tons of asteroidal material every night, every day, all the time. I digress. There's a whole bunch of things that happen that you can't explain. It's how you go about drawing a conclusion to explain those things, your hypothesis, and your critical thinking skill. And then the third thing is, can it be independently verified? Did somebody else see this guy get abducted by aliens? Did somebody else see this nose before and after the scar tissue appeared? And by the way, you're not allowed to have a hypothesis that has no way to be shown to be false. Wait, did you see that? Did you see that? My head just expanded to the edge of the galaxy and collapsed again, dude. But you didn't see it. Well, what if we set up a camera? No, there's no camera fast enough to detect my head expanding to the edge of the universe and collapsing again. You see, there's no way to show that claim is false, that it's not a usable hypothesis in science, that is not usable to think critically. And so these three things, what I call critical filtering, is the claim specific? Is there a simpler explanation? So often is. And can it be independently verified? Those are the critical filters which will help you think critically. There are a few more things to be aware of. Critical thinking, critical filtering, what I call red flags. The first one is the information you're receiving coming from an advertiser? Is it part of an advertisement, some organization that has a vested interest in this bit of information being true? Now, don't get me wrong, there's some advertising claims which are completely true. Just be sure that they are. Just be careful of the source. And speaking of sources, another red flag is when there really isn't a source. You just heard things. You may know the word hearsay. You hear it and you say it. But just watch out for those. Watch out for hearsay, because when there's no specific source, it may be that someone's just making it. Now, does the information benefit one group of people more than another? Someone says, well, we have the rights to the water under that piece of property. Do they really? Do they benefit from getting the rights to that water? Another red flag is to claim something that contradicts everything you've heard before. If someone says the moon is made of cheese, you might know that the moon is made of rocks. You might have seen film of that, for example. So if it contradicts everything you've heard before, just take a moment and question it. And then the last red flag is dangerous. Is it something you really want to be true? Is it really want there to be aliens? Is it really want to think that if you don't wash your hands, you're above the that's the one that gets you. That's the big red flag. So friends of mine moved into a new house here in Burbank, California. And when they went up and down the hallway of this new house, the lights were flickering. And they immediately presumed that there was a ghost. There must be a ghost in the house. We moved into a haunted house. So I looked into it for a few minutes, and I thought perhaps that behind the wall, when you walked down the hallway, the floorboards were being bent or reflected. And the reflecting floorboards were somehow working up the wall and influencing the wiring behind the wall, where two wires made in contact. Maybe they were coming in and out of contact as people walk down the hall, but they wait on the floorboards, influence the stuff behind the wall. Maybe the wires, which are normally held together with wire or come loose. But if you've ever put the wire in the wires, it takes quite a bit of twist or torque, and the wires are very hard to pull apart. As my father said, you want to have a kid, you don't swing on those wires. Yeah, that's what you want. So I got to thinking about it. I decided that hypothesis of floorboards deflecting the studs behind the wall, influencing some sort of junction box where wiring is, and the wire nut was twisted tightly on a pair of wires, I decided that hypothesis was extraordinary. So using Occam's razor in my mind, I eliminated that as a too complex solution to this problem. Oh, by the way, I'd already set aside the idea of ghosts. So I looked into it a little more carefully. And it turned out they were moving in, and they had cardboard boxes piled up against the wall. And sure enough, behind the boxes was a light switch that I don't think any of them even noticed was there when they moved in and piled up the boxes. And as they walked down the hallway, the boxes were piled up so close to the switch, just the slightest deflection would cause the switch to go on and off. And it wouldn't happen. Like you had to get your foot just in the right place on the floor for it to happen. But it was quite, as we say in science, reproducible. Once again, Occam's razor. It's not a ghost. It's probably not wires. Sure enough, it's boxes piled against a switch that no one knew was there. Slight deflection caused the lights to flicker. So everybody, that was a classic scientific method. A phenomenon, an observation, a hypothesis, run a test. Eliminate the hypothesis, go back and try again. And the lights stay on. So people might ask, how did this story apply to me? Right. Oh, I'm kidding. Of course, it has everything to do with it. First of all, despite centuries of science, no one's been able to prove a paranormal effect. Secondly, are you ready to change your hypothesis? Okay, I thought it was wires in the wall. No, I guess not. What else could it be? And then I realized, we all realized, that the boxes were piled against the switch that we didn't even know was there. So it's a way of thinking. So instead of going back, sure, it takes a little bit of patience, but knowing what's causing the light to flicker is of great value. So you might make a discovery along the way as well. For me, this is a small thing, but it's a model for a way of thinking that I find really compelling because science. Start by filtering claims. Watch out for red flags. Challenge personal beliefs using the scientific method. Find ways to test hypotheses. I want to scratch my nose. And you know why my nose is itchy? This is again night. Another organism. Parasite living on this species. Terrifying. Or it could just be one of those things. Scratch your nose. We need to talk about fear. It can motivate us or it can paralyze us. So we need to control it. The way to do that is with science. Solve this. Fear comes from the amygdala, this structure at the base of your brain, part of what many scientists call the limbic system. Limb means on the edge. What's on the bottom edge of your brain, and it affects the whole thing, your whole brain. It affects your ability to think logically, to think clearly, to think scientifically. But with our scientific understanding of the world, of our brains, we can deal with it, so we can overcome it. And if you're like me, and I am, you're very concerned about climate change. Climate change is scary. There are more fires, there are more floods, it is warmer than ever. And that fear can debilitate you from getting things done. Fear of climate change certainly can be overwhelming. But when we understand the problem arises, then we can deal with it. And we can use our brains, amygdala included, to not only react to climate change, but react to it in a positive way, so that we all get through the next few decades successfully. Am I right, Frederick? Frederica is not that concerned about climate change right now. But as time goes on, the desert environment is going to get drier. It's not going to get. Am I right, Frederica? He's into the regular solids. I think we all. There's some octahedral, dodecahedral, icosahedral. Now, don't get me wrong. When the tarantula was walking across the table, I could feel it. I could feel the fear. And so fear has great value in an evolutionary standpoint. If you are not afraid of anything, you're going to get in trouble. Say that your cat is going to lick your head off, for example. Fear is of great value. The problem is often that fear debilitates us. The Bigfoot fires a little too hard. Our brain gets hijacked by fear. And we're afraid to start from paralysis to doubt. You don't want that. So, for future, politicians have used fear to motivate. If we don't act now, if we don't end this war, the other guys if we don't take leadership, things are going to go very bad, so we should be afraid. If I'm not in charge, that's a classic motivating technique. And it's effective because fear is so deep within our brains, it's so deep within us. The example that comes to mind that people are very critical of the green new deals that will take away jobs, that aggressive stimulus with life will somehow ruin economies around the world. That's just, I don't think that's right. If we can provide clean water, renewable electricity, and access to for everybody in the world, that will be really good. And it will create jobs. The idea that you can use fear to maintain the status quo and the carbon dioxide in the atmosphere is misguided. We can't continue to pump carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. That's objectively true. Using fear to motivate people to not take action is in no one's best interest. And as some disclosure, I have reminded a couple of members of the U.S. Congress that in the U.S. Constitution, Article 1, which is the role of Congress, Article 1, Section 8, Clause 8, refers to the progress of science and useful arts. In 1786, they put the word science in the U.S. Constitution. They realized the value to the economy and the health of our citizens that science can provide. It's a remarkable incident. The founding fathers of the U.S., people who wrote the Constitution, they get mixed reviews. They were not perfect people. But they had this idea. I claim they were nerds. They had this idea that they could use science or the process of science for scientific thinking, where you respect facts. If you see something that disagrees with your presumptions or your worldview, then you change your worldview. You adjust.
I address you, the members of this League Congress, at a moment unprecedented in the history of the Union.
I think often about the speech that Franklin Delano Roosevelt, President Roosevelt, gave about the 4 freedoms that he talked about for people everywhere. This is his World War II. He said we want freedom from want. We don't want anybody to be hungry. Freedom of the press. We want the media to be able to express themselves. Freedom of religion. Freedom to worship. The 4th one, freedom from fear. Freedom from fear. It's a tremendous insight. When people are afraid all the time, the quality of life is much lower, but also they make bad decisions. We don't use our time productively because we're spending so much time being afraid. The example for me right now is climate change. Fear is paralyzing us. We're afraid to take big steps we need to take to address climate change. Clean water, renewable electricity, access to the internet for everybody in the world. These are going to take big changes. Storms and the droughts are terrifying. And I believe that with the process of science, with our understanding of science, we can take that fear and turn it into excitement. So when I was in school, I rooted for my team. Of course I did. I grew up in Washington, D.C. I still root for the Washington Nationals baseball team. I can't help it. I'm not a bad person. Supporting members of your family and members of your immediate tribe is deep within us. That's how we've succeeded, is working together in groups. But people have lost sight of the idea that we are only one race. Humans are all the same species. And this is largely derived nowadays from the color of people's skin. So this fantastic study was done about 20 years ago where people went around the world and looked at the color of people's skin, of native peoples, indigenous peoples, and compared it with the amount of ultraviolet light that lands on the Earth's surface where they live. And they are in lockstep. When you live near the equator, your skin has to be darker. And when you live farther from the equator, especially, strangely enough, in the islands of Britain, west of Europe, where the Gulf Stream comes by and makes it cloudy all the time, your skin has to be light. Of course, UV light falls on the oceans as well, but it's easier to get the picture if we just look at the continents. Here's the balance you have to achieve. You have to have light enough skin so that you get enough ultraviolet light to produce vitamin D, which is produced in your skin. Your skin has to be dark enough so that when ultraviolet hits your skin, it doesn't break down your foliage, your folic acid, so that children you bear have inherent defects they can't survive. It's this balance between vitamin D production and folate preservation. And that's why we have different skin colors everywhere. It's not rocket surgery, but it's amazing. So we're all in this together. We're all the same species. We got different skin color because our ancestors lived at different latitudes. It's cool. Let's celebrate it. We all have to work together as one global tribe to address climate change. So fear can keep you from doing things. It can also help you learn so that you can do things better. The example I give all the time, I was in the Boy Scouts. I was a wanted Boy Scout, an outstanding Scoutmaster. So they took us on some rivers that had a lot of white water. We were young people. And yes, I ran an aluminum canoe right into a rock. The rock tipped over. Everything's soaking wet. The rest of the weekend you're soaking wet, and your friends are making fun of you. For some reason, they didn't throw the big thing. But then as time went on, I got to be an older scout, and I was responsible for guys young. And so we're going down the same river, the Occoquan River in Pennsylvania, in the United States. And we're going for one of these big rocks. And understand, the river's having its way with the canoe. It's not like you can just pull over. The river's right. And I saw the guy, young guy, Ken, in front of me, the bow. He froze. He was like, we're going to run into this rock, we're going to drown. This is going to be really bad. But I, as the senior guy, also felt that fear. We're going for the rock. Whoa. We can take corrective action. I don't know if you've ever paddled a canoe, but the person in back is the guy who does the steering. It's like the rudder of the ship. I said to Ken, I said, brace. So he held his canoe paddle sideways forward, across the gunnels, the sides people. Then I steered us around the rock. I felt the fear, and I redirected. And you're saying, oh, come on, man. You're telling me that canoeing in the Boy Scouts is an analog for climate change. Yeah. I felt fear. I used science to redirect the canoe, hydrodynamics, energy, and water to redirect the canoe so that we are safe and sound today. Well, when it comes to climate change, we have to take that fear and redirect it in a productive way. We have to take action. We can't be stuck because we're afraid. Let's get to work, people. Let's take that fear, turn it into excitement. Let's go. Fear prevents you from thinking clearly. Some leaders use fear to influence you. Don't let fear paralyze you. Use science to channel your fear into excitement. it comes to climate change, it's all about machinists. Machinists are the key. You should consult everybody. Sooner or later, we all hit the limits of our own knowledge. But just remember, you're not on your own. Seek out experts. Draw on history. Draw on our community. Keep up with the latest science, and your knowledge will increase. Everyone you'll ever meet knows something you don't. These are words I do my best to live by. And this has to do with respecting each other, of course. One example from my past is this device that another engineer designed. I think about working on this instrument to navigate or steer a drill in a mine. Right, the instruments had to be held in a very straight line, almost perfectly aligned. And in order to do that, there were constraints. There were problems. This is called a centralizer. It's a very stiff spring. These wheels rolled against the inside of the pipe, the drill circuit. So you had to seal under very high pressure. You know, mines are often filled with water. It had to have a passageway or electrical wires. It had to have lubricant made of molybdenum disulfide. The big thing is, it had to be aligned as perfectly as possible. That required that these pins be fitted just so. It was complex because it was a trade-off. Changing the O-ring movement affected where the pins went, changing the lubricant affected the clearance on where these linkages fit together. All these things started to work against each other. When I was having trouble figuring it out, I was consulting design manuals, I was looking at the characteristics of precipitation hardened stainless steel, and I was chasing my tail. So what I did, I went to the machine shop and I talked to the machinists. And I guarantee they knew a lot more about machining metal than I did. Working together, we came up with a very elegant design that precisely fits together and maintains the instrument's alignment. So this to me became a metaphor for just about everything in life, especially climate change. So every one of us involved here on Earth as citizens of the planet are going to know things that other people don't know. We're going to have to work together with electrical engineers, with politicians, with governments, with taxpayers to get systems in place. Clean water, local electricity, and access to the internet forever. Because when you acknowledge that everyone you meet knows something, it means you're going to respect them. When we have respect for each other, then we can communicate. You know, we all have a tendency to think we know the answer to the really don't. But this leads to problems. But if we respect each other, if we acknowledge that other people have knowledge that we don't, then we can address these big issues. Sure, this is one problem with machine parts and engineering machines, but it became a way of thinking. I do my best to acknowledge that every students, aides, instructor, we all know things that other people don't know. So let's work together. Let's address climate change. Let's respect each other. And the world will be better for all of us. Words help you understand the world. The more you look and observe and learn about things, the more new words you'll be exposed to. Because each discipline, whether it's being an electrician, being a philosopher, being a doctor, being a steelworker, each of these professions has words associated with it, a jargon, argument. So by learning those, you learn more about the human experience. I love words. We had an old saying, party doesn't start till Bill gets out the dictionary. Sorry, I know for many of the younger viewers this would be completely lost on me, but the dictionary was plant-based information storage. And you could open it and there'd be a whole bunch of words. You could look at the words and learn more about words. It's the same thing you do online. It's the same thing you do with your phone. But in some cases, it was big and heavy. For me, the bigger and heavier is candy. And I am fascinated, I admit, with the origin of words, where words came from, etymology. The more you know about where a word came from, the more you know about what that word might mean. So speaking of the origin of words and where words come from, what's everybody's favorite adjective these days? Yes, right. Existential. We're in an existential crisis. That's an existential this, an existential that. It comes from the word existence or exist, to be, to just be. So when people say it's an existential crisis, it is to be hoped that they're talking about the utter disappearance of something. So everybody, you look at history. At one point, it's estimated right now, there were about 10,000 individual humans. Homo sapiens, our modern species. 10,000 is not very many, everybody. If we keep going down this road, ignoring climate change, not addressing the world's changing climate, we're not going to be able to feed everyone. We'll have starvation. When the environments become more extreme, the diseases that emerge are going to be more extreme. Humankind is probably not facing an existential threat as a species, but billions of us are facing an existential threat. Billions of us may die much sooner than we would have otherwise as a result of uncontrolled, neglected climate change. Back in the day, I talked to some who promoted genetically modifying crops and others who were against it because it didn't need to be done. And the reason they were against it was twofold. First, because it doesn't need to be done. Maybe big corporations will be doing organizations that have access to this kind of technology, which will have bad effects on small farms and so on. But the other thing is that you don't want to change things without knowing the full knock-on effects. That is to say, if you change a crop, a species of crop, you don't know what that's going to do to the insects that pollinate the crop. And I thought that was a pretty strong argument I embraced it. So I was for a long time opposed to genetically modifying crops. Since then, a couple things have happened. The big thing is they spend more time. When they modify crops, they literally change with extraordinary precision. Gene sequencing machines are amazing. And they can do all sorts of predictive things about what that gene is going to do. But that's the thing is the modifications they make are not enormous. They're tiny, so they can be evaluated over a few years in real fields. And that's what's done by regulation. But then the other thing, about 3 years ago, it was discovered that genes transfer between species naturally. The genes of one fungus getting in the genes of a tree through this natural gene transfer. That's where it changed my whole opinion of the whole thing. And when you look at what people like Thomas Jefferson and George Washington were doing with their crops, carefully crossbreeding the wheat, they were doing genetic modification in the traditional way. It was scientific, but not as precise a method as we can use today. If you look at the species of older ancient years of corn, they look like dolls of corn compared to modern. I'm not saying it's all about corn, but it's a good example from my experience. So changing my mind, I think, is a great thing from a scientific standpoint. And I had one view of this technology, and I changed it completely to a different, because I got more information. I learned more about it. And that's the process of science, everybody. Science is self-correcting. This is not somebody with a political worldview or a religious point of view. This is this wonderful process where we make an observation, have a hypothesis, test the hypothesis, compare what happened to what we thought would happen, and then we start over. That's science. I had presumptions about genetically modified crops, and I changed completely when I learned more about them. Everyone you'll ever meet knows something you don't. Learn new words as you go. When presented with new evidence, it's okay to change your mind. Climate change isn't a hoax. It's real, and it's serious. I've seen the scientific evidence firsthand, and it's undeniable. Let's evaluate these discoveries, see what they tell us. Once you've dug up the truth, you have the motivation to take action on this. Critical thinking is a way to evaluate evidence. Critical thinking is generally based on a claim. So let's talk about climate change. There are people who claim that the Earth's climate is not being affected by humans. There are people who claim that it is. Now let's evaluate the evidence. First of all, people have dumped a great deal of carbon dioxide and other greenhouse gases in the atmosphere since 1750, when steam engines were really perfected by James Watt, after whom we named the unit of power the watt. And the world has gotten warmer, and we proved this by looking at ice. Ice. I've been to Greenland, the East Greenland Ice Core Research Project, where the University of Copenhagen and the National Science Foundation of the U.S. have worked together to drill deep into the ice. Pull up cylinders of solid ice. This ice was created by layer after layer after layer after layer of snow that fell on the island of Greenland over millennia. These little bubbles of air. Bubbles of air were put there when snow fell in ancient times, over 1,000 years ago, in some places 1,000 years ago. As the snowflakes packed down by the weight of trapped bubbles between the tines of the snowflakes. We pull these ice cores up, we melt them carefully, measure the amount of various gases that were trapped in the ice. There's no way for those gases to get trapped in the ice now. Those gases were trapped in the ice thousands of years ago. There's nobody running around 2 miles down from the ice sheet in Greenland where the hypodermic needles squirting bubbles into the ice. And cores have been taken not only in Greenland, but in Antarctica and Siberia as well. They show the amount of greenhouse gases in the atmosphere has spiked. This increase begins with the Industrial Revolution in the 18th century. Measurements of the core's water isotopes tell us the Earth has gotten warmer at exactly the same time. This is no coincidence, people. So compare the overwhelming evidence from the ice cores with the anecdotal evidence having to do with certain events in certain places where it was warm now and then. It's not specific enough from the other side. Big thing the other side likes to say. Do you remember back in the mid-1970s there was a scientist who said that he thought we were entering an ice age? Well, the thousands of scientists presenting evidence that we're not entering an ice age now overwhelms that one cherry-picked example. Let us use Occam's razor. That is to say, let's look for the simplest explanation. One explanation is thousands of modern scientists are wrong. Another explanation is the one guy in the 1970s was wrong, or wrong at that time. He's since changed his mind. All right, compare those two scenarios. For me, the overwhelming evidence with Occam's razor is that thousands of scientists concerned by climate change now are correct. Then, the third thing, can it be independently verified? Yes. That's why we look at ice cores from Antarctica, ice cores from Greenland. We compare that with the population of pollen grains on the bottom of the ponds. We look at the width of the tree rings to see when the world is warm. Well, when it's warmer, trees grow faster than the rings are part of the climate. To say that climate science has been peer-reviewed is understood. In fact, people have made very compelling comparisons to sort of any other thing, like any other scientific, like the mass of an electron. You could say that there's more scientific consensus on climate change than there is on certain subatomic particle characteristics, things that have been studied for about a century. There's more disagreement about that than there is about climate science. This is what scientists do. The evidence is overwhelming for the Earth's temperature rising over the last 2.5 centuries. Anybody who claims that it's not happening has to present evidence that contradicts all that. So far, no one's been able to do that to my satisfaction, and to the satisfaction of the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change from the United Nations. The evidence for climate change is overwhelming. Critical thinking, critical filtering takes us there. Are the claims specific? Yes. The world's getting warmer because of carbon dioxide. What about Occam's razor? Is there a simpler explanation that the Earth's orbit is causing or the sun cycle is causing? No. They're inconsistent with the world getting warmer. Then can it be independently verified? Yes. That's what the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change does, is independently verify continually different sets of evidence. And by the way, the world's getting warmer extraordinarily fast. And the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change is a political organization that has to phrase things in a way that pleases many governments. And there are a lot of governments, but there are enough governments that depend on fossil fuels. They've been very influential in making the language appeal to everybody or be palatable to everybody. And the language is frankly soft. The situation is really serious. Let us think critically and address climate change. This idea, the critical thinkers like this idea that there's a conspiracy of scientists working together to get funding from governments to evaluate the claim that the climate is changing, but it isn't changing. Please stop and think about that. Have you ever been around scientists? All they want to do is prove the other scientist is wrong. That's their whole thing. There's not a conspiracy of those men and women. If anything, they butt heads all day. Nevertheless, 98% of world scientists agree that humans are changing the world's climate. Now, another critical thinking problem that I want you to evaluate with regard to climate change is people like to assail the credentials of the scientists who are making these claims. That he or she is getting paid by something, by a university, or getting a grant from the National Science Foundation or something. But compare that to the motivations of the oil industry, the fossil fuel industries over the last 30 years. Understand that they found memos from Exxon, before it was ExxonMobil, of people pointing out that the world's getting warmer because there's more carbon dioxide. Remind everyone, the big problem with climate change is not that the world was not once warm, it was much warmer during the time of the ancient dinosaurs. And there was a lot more carbon dioxide in the air 66 million years ago. But the problem is the speed, the rate at which we are adding carbon dioxide and greenhouse gases to the air. That's the problem. We built all this infrastructure, all these cities, bridges, sewer systems, right on shorelines. Half the people in the world, half the people live on seashores. So as the ocean gets bigger and sea levels rise, where are these people going to go and what are they going to do? And then the ecosystems that we created, where we grow our farms, are being affected by droughts, wildfires, and floods. So these things are converging fast. That's the problem, is the speed. I know, it sucks. It sucks for everybody. So should we run in circles screaming? No, we should get to work, people. Let's go. So we throw around the word carbon. Carbon is the key element, but we're really talking about greenhouse gases. Carbon dioxide and methane especially. And so carbon dioxide is carbon with 2 oxygens. The molecule is shaped like a barbell. It's the same gas that we exhale. It's the same gas I'm using to form these words. The other one is methane, or natural gas. That's the same thing. And that's carbon in a tetrahedron, a triangle-based pyramid. Both of these gases have this remarkable property where light at visible wavelengths that we can see around 550 billionths of a meter, 550 nanometers. That light goes right past these molecules, right past carbon dioxide, right past methane. But after this energy, the light energy from the sun, strikes the Earth's surface, it's absorbed, and then given off again at a more stretched out, longer wavelength, what is called the infrared, which is below red. Light of that wavelength runs into the carbon dioxide, runs into the methane, and gets redirected back to Earth. So these gases hold in the heat. So Earth would not be livable at all without some greenhouse effect. A little bit of carbon dioxide goes a long way in keeping the planet like ours warm. But now we're adding so much carbon dioxide so fast. The greenhouse effect is getting stronger and stronger, which is making everything do. What would help is making surfaces whiter or more reflective. Not because it would keep more heat from getting trapped so much as it would less of the light coming in change to the longer frequency. If you're out there, if you're a material science, if you're a kid in engineering school, if you're a chemical engineer, if you could invent a pavement that is white or much more reflective than black asphalt, change the world, you get rich. If you could invent a pale pavement, so let's get that done. Ice core analysis proves humans are adding an enormous amount of greenhouse gases to the atmosphere. Greenhouse gases prevent a large fraction of infrared heat from escaping Earth. It's really slap and wow. Let them hear you outside. Whenever you're going to undertake a job or a project, you have to have initiative. You got to get started. But as my father often pointed out, you've also got to finish. You have to have initiative and finish. So, how do we turn scientific thinking into action? How can we create things more efficient with science? Well, to help you build better, smarter, with a greater chance of success, I've got a handy little approach. When it comes to making something or solving a problem, I like to think of what I call the upside-down pyramid of design. Down here at the bottom is the design, the idea, the concept, the thing you want to do. And above that is what I call procurement, or getting the materials together you need to solve the problem or make this. Above that is the fabrication, the actual making of the actual thing, or solving the actual problem. Then above that is what I like to call marketing. It takes a tremendous number of people to get the idea out to the consumers, or the object out to where people are going to purchase it or make use of it. For me, the upside-down pyramid design applies to manufacturing anything. It also applies to addressing big ideas like climate change. If the design is good, the bottom of the pyramid, then there's a good chance as things go up, as you procure materials, as you put the thing together, as you convince people to use it or buy it, there's a good chance it'll be successful. But if the design isn't very good, that no matter how hard everybody else works, all the people in procurement, all the people in manufacturing, all the people in marketing, no matter how hard all those people work, no matter how good they are, all you're going to get is a well-rendered version of a bad design. So the upside-down pyramid of design, for me, is how nerds turn nerd ideas into nerd action. When I look at the upside-down pyramid of design, for me, every part is important. But what's especially important is the very base, the vertex, the tip, because that's where the design starts. That's where the constraints emerge. That's where the problem you're going to solve gets addressed. Now notice, as you go up the upside-down pyramid of design, the number of people that get involved generally increases. Really increases the amount of money that gets spent, the investment, the risks that people are taking get larger and larger. So if the design is good, there's a good chance that the product or the idea will be successful. If the design is not good, then no matter how hard everybody else works going up the pyramid, the thing is just not going to succeed. Look, nobody wants to make a bad movie. People do. Almost always because they haven't thought enough about the script. The movies is and this is a very frustrating idea for many people because you just want to get started. Let's go. Here's the design. Here, on the back of this envelope. Let's go. Let's go. And then people make this tremendous investment. And it doesn't always work out on the effort. If the design is good, then the chances of finding the problem are also very good. The design that comes to mind for me right now, which has to do with climate change, is the big U in Manhattan, the island of Manhattan. So for those of you familiar with New York, Manhattan is the part with all the skyscrapers and all that stuff. It's an island. The Hudson River. What happened when Hurricane Sandy? These parts of Manhattan got flooded. I was there when subway stations were closed because the tracks were underwater. You can't just say we're going to build a big seawall on the island of Manhattan. First of all, it would be fantastically expensive. Secondly, people wouldn't want it there. They wouldn't want the way it looks. The third thing is, it probably wouldn't work. The water would come over the wall and you'd be right back where you started. You'd have to get the water pumped back over the walls. So there are constraints. So what do we do with them? Well, architects, landscape architects, geologists, city planners, regulators, legislatures, everybody got together to solve this problem. Out of the many proposals, the city chose a clever design by the architectural firm Arche English. So what we're going to do is change the shape of the city a little bit, so that when the hurricane comes, the city can deal with it. We'll seal off some city streets with floodgates, and we're not allowing buildings to be built too close to shore. Instead, we're turning those areas into parks. So when the storm comes, the parks will get wet, but the parks will drain and dry out. Wetlands have three remarkable properties. First of all, they filter the water that flows through them. When it rains, they're home to wildlife. And the third thing that's vital in this situation is they soak up floods, giant sponges. So the big U protects against storm surges from the coast. But what about flooding due to rainfall? Recent storms with Hurricane Ida have shown we need to expand upon the design with green roofs, their storm sewers, and floodable park walkways within the city. All of this can be figured out as long as the idea that we're going to deal with the next hurricane, we're going to deal with it in a way that's sustainable for everybody who lives there. We're going to work with the island of Manhattan in the shape that it is right now. It's fantastic. It's inspirational. It's an application of the upside-down pyramid of design to climate change. I think about the second step in the upside-down pyramid of design, procurement, getting the materials together. These days, I think a lot about packaging. You know, for a long time, when you wanted to ship something, you put it in a package that could absorb shocks and so on. You'd make that package out of styrofoam. This material is made of little nodules that fuse together to mold the packaging into just the right shape to ship something. And this material looked like it would be recyclable. You could melt it down, reuse it, put it back together. But practically, it's turned out to be quite difficult to recycle styrofoam. It breaks into little particles, it floats to the top, it blows away. It's hard to get hold of. So, people are making packaging material. This is a honeycomb. It's fantastically strong. And we know how to recycle paper. We've been doing it for a century. Nowadays, thinking in new ways, people are making packaging material out of this stuff. It's made from a fungus, mushrooms. It's mycelium. You can grow it so it shapes around the thing you want to ship. It's fantastic. It's a new way of addressing procurement problems. So you want your packaging materials to be sustainably produced so they can be recycled. You don't want to throw all that stuff away. It's a classic example of using the constraints. We've got to ship something. We have to package it so it can make the trip. But let's do it with materials that we can reuse or recycle. I've taken the next step on the upside-down pyramid of design. They train you in slate school not to make sound, right? So as we go up the upside-down pyramid, we get to the fabrication stage. I think of objects like this. This is a ratchet socket. And most of my life, an object like this can be made by removing material. You have a block of steel and you hollow it out. You have a spring inside. And that would be made by cutting some material. But nowadays, you can make objects like this by adding material, so-called additive manufacturing, or 3D printing. An object like this now can be made on the International Space Station. So once the material is up there, all you have to do is send software up to the space station and they can make any tool they need. But think about it on Earth. If we can eliminate the transportation requirement to send objects like this from one place to another, we can save a tremendous amount of energy and cut back a tremendous amount of greenhouse gas emissions. The future is bright when it comes to additive manufacturing. It's the next step on the upside-down pyramid of design. Thank you. Nicely done. What's that? Come on, it's going to give me a let's go. You know, at the top of this upside-down pyramid is what we call marketing. We call it lobby or selling. The whole thing is if the idea is good, the design is good at the base of the pyramid, then the fabrication is good. Then the marketing people, marketing money can be well used to sell the product or lobby for the idea. This is especially for management. The messaging is really important, and the messengers then can be successful if the message telling people less use less clean water, wear dirty clothes, eat less, be miserable. Then no matter who all is going to try to sell that idea, they're going to go for it. But if you present climate change as an opportunity, you're going to have new jobs, new sources of electricity, the environment's going to be cleaner. Then the lobbyists, the messengers, the marketers can be successful. We've can all work together to address climate change by means of the upside-down pyramid of design. So for me, as an engineer, you want the product to look nice, be elegant. If you have a message about climate change, you want it to sound good. And of course, I say all the time, good engineering invites right use. It's easy to remember because it has invite and right in the same sentence. And so along that line, when it comes to climate change, we want the messages and the solutions, the things we produce, be elegant, good looking. You know, people make fun of engineers' clothes, and they should. But keep in mind that so much of your built environment, so much of every object you use and interact with was designed by an engineer who had a nice sense of style. No. I came because I love. All right. Now, the upside-down pyramid of design may seem like a simplification, but I like to think of it as many pyramids stacked on top of each other. And at each joint or vertex, there'll be decisions. There'll be another pyramid within a pyramid within a pyramid. All of them will have these four phases: the idea, pyramid, fabrication, and then the selling to the next level, the marketing to the next level. And for me, at each place along the way, you're only doing one. This is what I like to call monotasking. The idea that you can do all of these things at the same time is only possible because you started one thing at a time. Up the pyramid, then the pyramid, then the pyramid. It's just a fun way of looking at it. Making something or creating an idea, I recommend the upside-down pyramid of design. Design to procurement, fabrication, marketing. You want it to all fit together. You want it to be elegant. You want it to look good and sound good and work well. You want it to be a knots. You want to tie it all together in a way that is effective and elegant. Like a square bow. Just an example. The four stages of the upside-down pyramid of design are the design, procurement, fabrication, and marketing. Spend enough time with the design. Nuts and popcorn and celery. It's kind of how I got this far. And look, I'm fine. The scientific path is seldom a straight line. To achieve your goals, you need to face challenges. Don't take these limitations the wrong way. Let's let them experience. Embracing constraints can spark your creativity and lead you to innovative solutions. Joy of constraints. Constraints or rules or regulations aren't bad things. They're just things you have to meet or abide by in your design or with your idea. And so furthermore, when the government has regulations about automobile safety and drug safety, the environmental protection is determining how many miles per gallon you can get. Those aren't bad things. Those are things that you have to deal with as a designer or a procurer, a fabricator, or the analogy to a machine is perfect. You want a machine to have all the parts it needs, but no more parts. You want all the regulations you need, but no more. But you gotta have some regulations, everybody. People want to solve problems. That's what we want to do. You'll hear the expression, oh, let's just think outside of the box. Think outside of the box and be creative to solve the problem. Well, I believe that expression is based on an old puzzle that's been around since I was a kid. It looks like this. There are 9 dots arranged in a box. Right now, the rule thing is you have to connect all 9 dots with just 4 lines. And let's say you can't lift your pen, pencil, or stylus off of the page. All right, so let's try it. We get started. We'll go across the top. There's 3 of the dots. On the side, 3 of the dots. On the bottom, 3 of the dots. Well, you can't get that last dot on the side and the dot in the middle. It's just one more line. You can't do it. Oh heavens. You're puzzled. You're stuck. But if you try to puzzle again, going outside of the box, you can go like this. Go up on the bottom, diagonally to the top, down here along the side. Now go outside of the box. And come back up across, picking up those 2 dots, and just one more line. You get the last dot. Isn't that fabulous? The thinking outside the box comes from the rule, the game, where you're only allowed to have 4 lines of any length. But you're only allowed to have 4 lines. And you can imagine the situation, I can imagine the situation easily in computer code, where you're only allowed 4 lines, or so many characters, or so many milliseconds or microseconds of computing time. I get it. So you got to embrace those constraints and work with them. The constraints are good. They're the rules by which you must play. Think about connecting a bridge from one side of the river to the other. You can't put the bridge just anywhere. It's got to be where the banks will support the ends of the bridge, for example. So constraints are not bad. They just are. And as an engineer, I embrace the constraints. I celebrate the joy of constraints. When I think about the joy of constraints, I can't help but think about my old job at Boeing, working on 747s. An airline like this is included in the safety. You're probably familiar with oxygen vest, oxygen life vest, life raft, and the redundancy in the hydraulic systems and flight controls is remarkable. All of these things add weight to the airplane, which adds cost to every plane ticket, but none of us would want to fly without them. When I compare this to what happens in the Texas power grid after this recent cold snap, the whole grid in Texas went down because of years of not having regulations, not having constraints, and trying to isolate the Texas power grid from electrical power grids that were around it. So when there was a cold snap, the grid went down, people suffered. It got cold, people died. All because of electricity. This is an avoidable problem. It's a situation where, like a machine, you want all of the parts you need, but no more. You want all the regulations, but no regulations, just no regulations sake. But we do need some regulations. Electricity is essential to our modern way of life. We've got to have it for everyone. And in order to provide it for everyone, we're going to have a few constraints. There are going to be regulations provided. Power providers to provide electricity, even with fluctuations in weather. And those are coming because of climate change. So let's work together to celebrate the joys of constraint. Fuel efficiency standards, smog checks, crash test ratings. Rather than hindering development, these restrictions lead to innovation, save profits. When I think about the joy of constraints, I like to think about car design. Now we're constrained. We're going to be driving cars on roads for some time to come. Cars can be quite dangerous. For a long time, cars were made out of stiff metal shapes that would hold their shape in the car crash. But that turns out to be dangerous. So instead, nowadays, engineers have designed cars that crumple, that instead of trying to hold their shape during the crash, they smush, they compress, and that protects the passenger and the drivers inside. Designers also added collapsible steering columns, interior padded surfaces, lap and shoulder belts, and airbags, all of which dramatically reduced injuries. And none of this would have happened without regulations. And by the way, when you make cars out of crushable shapes, they're generally lighter weight, so they use less fuel, which produces less greenhouse gas emissions. So, here's some crash test of the driver. We'll put him in the old style stiff metal car. Then in the crushable crash test car, we have another driver safely inside. Ready? 3, 2, 1. Oh wow. Both suffered some traumas there. Let's have a look. It's not good. The driver of the metal old summer car suffered severe trauma. Modern, impressive, and crushed them. That's the main driver. It's fine. Right. So once again, constraints enabled us to make better designs that make people safer and reduce greenhouse gas emissions, which addresses climate change at the same time. It's the joy of constraints. Don't automatically think of constraints as bad things. Constraints can inspire creativity, spur innovation, save lives. So I tip up the cup and the tea doesn't come out because air can get in behind. Even with this plastic lid on a largely plastic cup, it seals well enough that you can't take a sip. So using a tool, I will enlarge the air opening, the vent back of the teacup. This will enable me to take a sip. It's not magic, people. It's science. Science! Science. To tackle climate change, we need to break it into separate parts. First, environmental challenges. Then, using all the scientific tools at our disposal, we will find solutions. When you look at Earth from space, you don't even see the atmosphere. It's so thin. And yet that atmosphere and the chemistry of that atmosphere is what sustains us. So if we accidentally change the chemistry of the atmosphere, we could make this place unlivable for a large fraction of the population. And we don't want that. Greenhouse gases we produce, carbon dioxide and methane, are our main worries. So where do our greenhouse gases come from? Now, take a look at this. Most of our greenhouse gases are produced by transportation. Next is electrical generation. Then industry, writ large. Some commercial and residential things produce greenhouse gases. And finally, agriculture. All of these are big contributors to climate change. And we'll talk about each one coming right up. Most of our transportation is done with fossil fuels. That is to say, we have cars and trucks, we have airplanes, and we especially have very large ships at sea that use this really hard to describe dirty fossil fuels, bunker oil. And all these things are producing carbon dioxide and other particulate small particles at an extraordinary rate, 51 billion tons a year. So we want to electrify all transportation. I say electrify, use electric motors instead of fossil fuel gas-powered diesel motors because they're more efficient. and they're cleaner. There's no exhaust with an electric motor. Now, we have the technology to convert cars, buses, and trains to electricity. I drive an electric car. The car doesn't know if the electrical energy is coming from a nuclear power plant or a solar panel or a wind turbine or a coal-fired electrical plant. The car can't tell. It doesn't need to know. It's a car. If you've ever driven an electric car, you'll never go back. When will you go back to a fossil fuel? You won't. You won't go back. This gets back to this mythic thing, second law of thermodynamics. When you use heat to make something spin, to make mechanical work, you are constrained by what Star Trek engineers would call the laws of physics. But electrical motors are much more efficient. So as we change to electric vehicles, we can make our transportation systems more efficient. We can have less greenhouse gas emissions. We can make the world cleaner and quieter. And I think in the future, people will not own cars. I know a lot of young people, the millennials, they never learned to drive. The more people who ride so-called mass trains, the better for all of us. Because individuals and individual cars takes a lot of energy. And we need these big, wide roads to move just a few people. We can do more with less. Move more people around with less. Because public transportation is getting better. And there are ways to get around that were not available when I was. By the way, I'm a huge advocate of bicycles. Bicycles are the most efficient machine we know. A human on a bicycle. Hold a boat vehicle for 30 miles. It's amazing. So we rode my bike to the first couple of Earth days. We were downtown. Washington, D.C. was a small town then. I rode my bike and walked it to the flagpole at the Washington Monument. In those days, they were concerned that Earth pollution. The idea was to do less. Like if you drove less, go to car less. If you wore dirty clothes, you could use less clean water to wash your clothes. All these things less, and then we'd have more for everyone. And that's a fine idea. But that's not what people want. People everywhere want to live the way we live in the developed world. And so for that, we're going to have to find ways to do more with less. This is where efficiency comes in. And converting everything to electrical power instead of fossil fuel power. We can do this. The other thing would be great, I'm not joking everybody, is electric airplanes. I'm not kidding. And the future might very well be not batteries being carried around by airplanes, but hydrogen. Hydrogen is a very lightweight, very pretty energy-intensive fuel. When you use it in a fuel cell to make electricity, the exhaust is water vapor. You run these very efficient electric motors and fly them. It's a fantastic idea. So I think about my grandfather, who, by all accounts, rode a horse in World War I. He could ride a horse. He learned to ride a horse. He rode around. Now, nobody rides a horse in battle. Everything's changed. In just 2 decades, transportation changed completely. So we can do this. Be optimistic about this. So a big key to our future is electricity. I think we could invest strongly or a lot in new ways to produce, distribute, and store electricity. So the reason you want energy to be renewably produced is the same reason you want food to be renewably produced. You don't want to have a farm field where you grow one crop and never use it. The wind's always going to blow, the sun's going to come up every day and go down every day. So that's a way of looking at energy production. You're going to renew it every day or every season or every week. So if you don't do that, you're going to run out of resources sooner or later. By the way, people talk about running out of gas, running out of gasoline. That may be true of the really pure, really good so-called Algerian crude oil. But the thing we're never going to run out of is coal. There is so much coal buried everywhere, all over the world. Coal, more coal. So coal is an old swamp that is dried out and turned to stone. Narrow stone. If you've ever handled pieces of coal, it's like a rock, but it has a softness. Anyway, it's made of old parts. It's gel, it's carbon. You get it hot, it starts burning. Carbon combines with oxygen in the air and produces the same thing you've heard about, carbon dioxide. People can see the problem. People can see that you can't burn coal together. My experience has been coal miners like the money, but they're not crazy about the work. Working underground in the dark, day and night, is really stressful. And my experience is they did not mind repurposing their work day. The subject of boss gets into this business of repurpose. Everybody, even if the wind turbine is manufactured overseas, it's got to be set up or erected here where you live. And that's going to take skilled construction workers. People will repurpose their job skills to build these wind turbines and the systems that connect them to the electrical grid. So if I were king of the forest, we would be investing like crazy in the electrical grid. The thing that's changing, if you have a house like mine with a few solar panels, I'm producing electricity during the day and putting that electricity back on the power grid. But what we need now is to have that system compatible with the old system. By that I mean for a century or so, we've been producing electricity in a concentrated power grid and distributing it like tentacles of an octopus. But the trouble is that the system only works in one direction. We need a two-way system. Now electricity can be produced on top of homes, on top of warehouses, and big box department stores. And then we need a way to get that electricity onto the grid and distribute it. It reminds me very much of the problem of handing a mobile phone call from one cell to the next as you drive or walk down the street, as millions of cars drive or millions of people walk down the street. We need our electrical grid to have that kind of capability. That's going to take innovation from innovators. You can invent a better battery. It will change the world. You'll get rich. Energy storage is a huge problem right now. We can build these enormous fields or farms of solar panels, but we need to be able to store that energy in some fashion. People will go into these industries making things more efficient, building new wind turbines, solar panel farms, large panels. So there's so much work to do. Don't work for at least 3 million people from now decades ago. We're just scratching the electrical generation surface. I think one day it will be possible that fusion energy here on the Earth's surface, just like we have center of the sun, on the star. That would be extraordinary. The way to find out if this is possible is to invest in it. Think about the billions of dollars, the trillions of dollars we spend on all sorts of